I made my exit. Better to burn out, right, than to fade away? Kurt Cobain said that in his letter. I watched a video about all the famous ones. Ernest Hemingway, Robin Williams, Virginia Woolf, Hunter S. Thompson, Sylvia Plath, David Foster Wallace, Van Gogh. I'm not comparing myself, trust me. Those people actually made an impact. I did nothing. I couldn't even write a note. Burning is the right way to paint it. You feel yourself getting so hot day after day, hotter and hotter. It gets to be too much. Even for stars. At some point, they fizzle out or explode. Cease to be. But if you're looking up at the sky, you don't see it that way. You think all those stars are still there. Some aren't. Some are already gone, long gone. I guess now so am I. My name. That was the last thing I wrote on another kid's cast. Not quite a goodbye note, but hey, I made my little mark. On a broken limb. Seems about right. Poetic, if you think about it. And thinking is just about all I can do now. 1. I thought it was a dream. How could I know? It's not like someone gives you a heads up. Hey, just so you know, you're dead. The day started like any other. The whole happy family seated at the kitchen table, eating breakfast. I wasn't really eating. Neither was Larry. Too busy with his phone. Neither was Cynthia. Too busy serving the rest of us. My parents love it when I call them by their first names. Zoe was the only one actually consuming food. I didn't want to go to school. My mother wouldn't hear it, said it was the first day and I had no choice. School would do me good, she said. She watched me sleep all summer. She was desperate to get me out of the house. But really, what was the point of going to school? They never knew what to do with me. If you don't fit into one of their boxes, you get tossed aside. I could learn way more at home, reading my own books and watching Vice. At least when I was at Hanover, I can mention Nietzsche without a teacher staring back with a blank look. Unfortunately, the whole private school experiment was a bust. Apparently, Adderall to get through finals, or the day, is perfectly okay, but a little weed in your locker is unforgivable. Hypocrites. Maybe now they'll see how ass-backward they are. Hey, geniuses, no one dies from marijuana. Pills, though? Yup, you guessed it. Then Cynthia tried to get Larry involved. That's always good for a laugh. You're going to school, Connor, was all he could muster. This really set off my mother that my father couldn't be bothered. They went at it for a while, talking like I wasn't there. Welcome to the Murphy household. If your name is Zoe, strap in for the ride of your life. If you happen to be Connor, well, you're going to want to stay good and numb. I ended up going to school. Some fights aren't worth the effort. I got a lift from Zoe, yet another perk of being me. Your little sister drives you around. All because the Subaru that Larry Luxury handed you like an olive branch is in a recycling heap somewhere. There was no deer in the road that night. I can come clean about that now. I crashed into that tree because I felt like it. My messiest decisions were always like that, made in a split second. 9 times out of 10, I'd walk away only wounded. Then on the 10th time, turns out I was right to want to skip school. I got singled out in homeroom, even though I wasn't the only one on my phone, got messed with in the cafeteria, messed with again in the computer lab. I'm just trying to mind my own fucking business. Not even allowed to do that. And that was only day 1. What about the rest of the year? 170-something days left. How am I supposed to get through? I couldn't. I skipped my last 2 classes, walked right out of the building. I couldn't shake the feeling, free falling, like there's nothing to hold on to. I reached out to the only person I thought might help. And then when that didn't work, I woke up in the hospital. My family was there, all of them, looking at the floor, their phones, the insides of their eyelids, anywhere but at one another or me. I knew what was coming. I'm a fuck-up. I know. Spare me. I got out of bed before anyone could say a word. Just left the room. No one bothered to come after me. At the front desk, there were 2 nurses. One said, "Room 124. So sad. He's the same age as Evan." "I know," the other nurse said, sighing. The first nurse made a call, left a message. "Hey, honey, just checking in. I wanted to hear how the rest of your day went. Did you get any good signatures on your cast? You'll probably be sleeping when I get home, but I'll see you in the morning. I love you so much. I just want you to know that." She put down her phone, hands on her forehead, soothing her temples. I couldn't believe it, who this woman was. "I think I know your son," I said. "I signed his cast today." She didn't answer, just walked away. Another fan of mine. I figured Evan had told her what happened between us. Probably made it seem like he was innocent, just standing there like a saint, and here comes big, bad Connor Murphy, but he's the one who messed with me. I didn't really mean to push him. Another one of those split-second decisions. Honestly, they're more like knee-jerk reactions or something deeper. Part of my nature. That's just what I do. I ruin things, always, whether I want to or not. The thing I'm ruining can be the best thing in my life, and I'll know it too. And I'll still be powerless to stop it. Or too scared. I turned back down the hall, vowing to be more patient with my waiting family. I reached my room 124. I looked in. That's when I saw him. The kid in the bed. It was me. I bent over him, the other me, skin gray, mouth sagged open. I got what I wanted, I guess. I'm free now. No one in my way, no one waiting around a corner, setting a trap, no one checking for redness in my eyes, asking where I've been all night, making promises. I've been hanging here at the hospital. Everyone is beaten up and broken, just like me. Even the staff. They just hide it better than the patients do. Especially that one nurse, Evan's mom. She's kind of a disaster, always rushing around the halls, but she seems decent. Today, on her break, she barely touched her sandwich. She was looking up college stuff for Evan. I can't picture Cynthia doing that, even though I was her life's work. My mother preferred to delegate. She treated me like one of her home renovation projects. Hire help. Call in the specialists, the best in the business. Let's get this kid fixed up. Do whatever you gotta do. Take him overnight or for weeks at a time. Pump him full of meds, solo sessions, group sessions. We've got money, as much as it takes. Spare no expense. Just solve this problem of ours. And hurry. My husband's growing impatient, losing faith. Asking why throw good money after bad. It hasn't worked so far after all these years. Maybe it's best to abandon the project. Stop the work, at least for the time being. Let's wait this thing out, see what happens. And here we are. 2. Mrs. Gorblinski. She actually gave a shit. Other people assumed she was a nemesis. Because of the story, I guess. The legend. That's what happens with legends. The facts get pushed aside and replaced with something more dramatic. I'm guilty of it, too. I've heard the story so many times, even told it myself. I began to believe the simple version. Connor Murphy threw a printer at Mrs. G. Well, yeah, but... It was a long time ago, 2nd grade. I only remember bits and pieces. We all had jobs. On the wall was a chart. Lunch helper, schedule announcer, board eraser, nurse buddy, recycler. The most prized job of all, really the only one that mattered, was line leader. Everyone wanted to be line leader. For me, it was the idea of being in charge, controlling things. We weren't curing cancer or anything, but trust me, this was all very serious at the time. Each day, Mrs. G moved our names one spot. I waited my turn, watching my name advance. Finally, I was one spot away. The next day, I came to class dressed up, probably. That's how excited I was. But something was wrong. I wasn't line leader. I had a different job. It was supposed to be my day. The class was lining up behind someone else. I called out to Mrs. G, "Connor, it's not the time for questions." She was a real no-nonsense type, everything by the book. There was a right way to do things, an order, and that order was now out of whack. There had been an oversight. Mrs. G would fix this right away. She'd appreciate what was at stake. I told her, "I got skipped." "Get in line, Connor." "But it's my turn to be." "You heard me." "No, it's not fair." I stepped in front of the line. One of the kids pushed me. I tried to explain. I felt myself getting hotter, the room closing in, tears forming. "Connor, please find your place in line." "But, Connor, I won't tell you again." "But it's my turn to be line leader." I reached out for the first thing I could find, felt the printer with both hands and swept it off the desk. It slid across the floor, stopping at Mrs. G's feet. The tray broke off, flew to the other side of the room. The room went silent. All eyes on me. Miss Emerson escorted the class out. Mrs. G stayed with me, tried to calm me down. I couldn't even look at her. And that's it. As far as everybody knows, that's where our story ends. I freaked out and threw a printer at Mrs. G. But it wasn't the end. The next day, the printer was back in place, back on the desk, minus the tray. And on the job chart, I was line leader. And Mrs. G had moved my seat closer to her desk. She gave me a little pad. If I had a problem or question, I could tear a blank page from the pad, crumple it into a ball, and place it in the glass jar on her desk. She wouldn't stop teaching the class on my behalf. "I won't tolerate any more disruptions," she said. But she promised that if I placed the ball in the jar, she'd see it. And when the time was right, she would get to me. But I had to be patient. If I was, she would listen. She would hear me. I would be heard. Everyone in school knew about the printer. It became this thing that followed me around. The log line to my movie, telling people what to expect of me, telling me what to expect of myself. I was the villain. That was my role. And Mrs. G was the victim. And for years, that's been our story. But it demands a correction. She made a mistake. And so did I. 3. My family is gathered in the living room, looking all Norman Rockwell. I wasn't planning on coming home. I left this house for a reason, didn't I? Turns out, I just couldn't stay away. Larry is nursing a scotch. Cynthia and Zoe are reading through the same stack of papers. "I never realized Connor was so interested in trees," Cynthia says. Speak of the devil. I can't say I'm surprised about being the topic of conversation. They loved talking behind my back when I was alive, too. "I'm pretty sure they're talking about weed," Zoe says. "Where? I don't see that," Cynthia says. "When they say trees." "Oh," Cynthia says. "Oh." I lean over my mother's shoulder, see my name on the paper. I also see the name Evan Hansen. "You have to read these, Larry." Larry nods, sips his Lafroig. The Scotch habit doesn't count, you see. It's part of the job. Hell, the old man's firm gifts him a new bottle every Christmas. I sampled my father's collection. Not my thing. Alcohol was always my least favorite buzz. "He seems just, I don't know, different," Cynthia says. They're reading emails. From me to Evan, from Evan back to me. What is this? "I loved that documentary you told me about. It was delightful." Who talks like that? "I'm excited to go on long walks with you this summer." It's like a whole creepy story. I've given serious thought to what you said. Family is definitely most important. I've been good and gone too many nights to count. I've been up late and baked, and I'd scribble out wacky shit. But never have I come up with anything this bonkers. Dear Evan Hansen, you're the man. Amazing. Life is looking up, way up. I take it back. This shit is brilliant. I'm ready to make a change, all thanks to you. Why is Evan doing this? First he plants a letter for me to find. Now he's got my family involved, feeding them lies. Guess what, Mom? The reason I seem different is because this isn't fucking me. My mother takes off her reading glasses, the one she never wanted to be photographed wearing. I never knew how much our trips to the apple orchard meant to him. The apple orchard. Haven't thought about that place in years. Thinking about it now, I have to say, nothing terrible comes to mind. No blow-up fights or traumatic episodes. That's usually what happens when I dig too deep into memories. The worst stuff pops up first. But those orchard trips were pretty uneventful. In a good way. We acted like a normal family. My mother would pack lunches. Zoe and I would roll down that bumpy hill. My father put work aside, paid attention. Why couldn't that happen more often? Why couldn't we carry that feeling home with us? He says here that when it closed, he felt like his childhood ended. It makes sense when you think about it. That's around the time his behavior really started changing. No. If it's answers you want, Mom, you're digging in the wrong place. That's one thing about my mother. You see, my father is convinced there's only one right answer to every question, but my mother will keep searching forever. She'll try anything and everything. Sounds noble, and maybe it is, but even that approach can start to feel like torture, especially when you're the lab rat. I can't do this, Zoe says. She drops the paper and rises from the couch. Thankfully, someone in my family seems to have a functioning bullshit detector. But she can't escape. Larry hits her with one of his stock questions. How's school? Amazing, Zoe says. All of a sudden, everyone wants to be my friend. I'm the dead kid's sister. The dead kid. Me. I'm sure Mr. Contrell is happy to have you back at practice, my mother says. You guys really don't have to do this, Zoe says. Do what? Just because Connor isn't here trying to punch through my door screaming at the top of his lungs that he's going to kill me for no reason, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden we're the fucking Brady Bunch. Not the most comfortable thing to hear your little sister say. But actually, I think there's a compliment in there somewhere. Some vindication, at least. Because I've often said, maybe it's not me contaminating the family pond, but the other way around. She storms off. Not much of a storm, in truth. If it were me, I probably would have smashed something. Then, afterward, I'd feel bad about it, but not bad enough to apologize, or not do it again. She'll be all right, my mother says. We are all grieving in our own way. Larry knocks back his scotch. My mother returns to the emails. I feel like I'm seeing a new side of him. He seems so much lighter here. I can't remember the last time I heard him laugh. I laugh plenty. I laughed plenty. I laughed at how absurdly fucked everything is. I laughed because there's not much else you can do. You can laugh or you can cry. I do plenty of both, but see, any time my mother got a glimpse of the raw me, she couldn't take it. There'd be so much fear in her eyes. There was love, too. I saw it. But the fear, that's what stuck with me. You catch that look, and it's not like you're itching to open yourself up. No, you shut down pretty quick. I'm going to bed, my father announces. Come sit with me. I'm exhausted. You know, Larry, at some point you're going to have to start. Not tonight. Please. I suppose this is what I get for building my walls so high. My family never actually knew about my life. Occasionally, I'd reference a friend, going out with a friend, got it from a friend, but I don't think they believed me, especially when I never forked over a name. Even now I don't like saying his name. I wonder, has he even noticed I'm gone? I wander upstairs to Zoe's room. I find her strumming her unplugged electric guitar. What she said about me is only partly true. I screamed at her a few times, banged on her door. I never threatened to kill her, though. Does she really believe that? Of course I'd never actually hurt her. It's like that quote, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. That was me. That was also Shakespeare. Just because I didn't hand in my essay on Macbeth doesn't mean I didn't pay attention. Maybe I paid too much attention. She's on the carpet now, her back against the bed. Her strumming stops. She props her pick in her mouth and scribbles in a notebook. I can't remember the last time I was in her bedroom. We were next-door neighbors who just stopped saying hello. I thought she was the clean one, but this is chaos in here. Clothes scattered, blurry still-life photos from an instant camera, a pile of loose guitar strings, old toast on a plate next to a dirty knife. Lady Macbeth is another famous suicide. There's a line of hers I underlined. Something about how you get no lasting satisfaction from causing destruction. In the end, the only real solution is to destroy yourself. A new sound. Zoe is talking. Not talking, actually. Softly singing.
I could curl up and hide in my room. Here in my bed, still sobbing tomorrow.
She mutes the cord. More scribbling in her notebook. She sings a cappella.
I could give in to all of the gloom, but tell me what for?
She hums while she writes. It's a developing melody. She retrieves her pick, nestles the guitar to her chest like that raggedy bear she used to tote around. Early on, we got along fine. Backseat passengers on the same ride. We'd share beds on vacations. Before Larry had his name on the letterhead, we'd all pile into one hotel room. We'd feed the cats under our deck. This was back at our old house. Cynthia didn't want us letting them inside. Diseases, she said. We'd trade Halloween candy. Zoe liked chocolate. I was all about the sours. She'd want to do everything I was doing. Play with my cars and X-Men. Pretend she was a soldier in my army. At some point, though, she stopped fighting for me. Where's the loyalty? The other day at lunch, when Evan and I had that argument, she went to see if he was okay. What about me? Who is checking up on me?
Why should I have a heavy heart? Why should I start to break in pieces? Why should I go and fall apart for you?
I never knew she was singing in here. Now that I'm hearing her, there's no way to unhear. She enunciates each syllable, commanding my attention. A private moment unknowingly shared. There's so much hurt in her voice, even more of it in her words.
Why should I play the grieving girl and lie, saying that I miss you and that my world has gone dark without your light? I will sing no requiem tonight.
I wouldn't call it a lullaby. 4. A flyer stapled to a telephone pole. Connor Project kickoff ceremony. And so here I am. How could I miss it? An event in my honor. Students, teachers, local paper. Even the folks are in attendance. There are speeches, a slide presentation, a performance by Zoe and the Jazz Kids. This is really something. I mean it. I'm almost flattered, and yet call it habit, but I can't shake the feeling that they're only fucking with me. How can I not? They stand here talking about how much I meant to them, how much they relate, how they feel the things I felt, the isolation, unworthiness, loneliness. But how the hell do they know how I felt? I had to die for them to notice I was ever alive. I'm ready to leave, but a new speaker is being called to the stage. He's being referred to as Connor's best friend. I tremble. Could it really be him? Maybe my absence finally registered. I move closer, searching, but as soon as the speaker hits the stage, I see it's not a match. Just from the walk. Stiff and unsure. Nothing like him. Stupid to even dream it. Instead, it's my other bestie, Evan Hansen. What's the deal with this kid? And why the fuck is he wearing my tie? I'm positive it's mine. I picked it out myself years ago. My mother took me shopping for a suit. She said it would be good to have one for a special occasion. Always the dreamer, my mother. Rather than burst her bubble, I went along with it. I let her believe my special occasion was coming. Curiosity draws me closer to the stage. It's a totally different show up here, a little too intimate. I can see the beads of sweat on his forehead, hands fumbling on a stack of index cards. He won't even look at the crowd. Been a minute and he hasn't even said hello. Finally, he moves his lips. Voice so frail. Even with the microphone, you have to lean in to hear him. And I'm only a few feet away. It's hard to imagine anything more fragile. Honestly, it wouldn't shock me if he burst into flames under that light. With shaking uncertainty, he reads through 2 index cards. Good morning, students and faculty. I would just like to say a few words for you today about my best friend, Connor Murphy. I'd like to tell you about the day that we went to the old Autumn Smile apple orchard. Connor and we stood underneath an oak tree, and Connor said he wondered what the world would look like from all the way up there. So we decided to find out. We started climbing slowly, 1 branch at a time. When I finally looked back, we were already 30 feet off the ground. Connor just looked at me and smiled that way he always did, and then, He wipes his hand on his shirt. I fell. He keeps wiping. I lay there on the ground, and then he turns to the next card. Good morning, students and faculty. The entire stack drops to the floor, cards everywhere. I turn to gauge the crowd. My fellow spectators have lost their patience. Scattered whispers build to a steady rumble. Phones alight, the drama on stage filmed, immortalized. Poor guy, aware but oblivious, down on his knees collecting his words. I can see the tears forming. I know that look, when your insides are about to pour right out of you and it's too late to stop it. You're naked. Everyone watching. They see you there, defenseless, and they pounce. No mercy. 5. He steps away from the mic and hurries off the stage. A pause. Everywhere. What was that? Again, my default reaction, this has to be a joke. I'm being messed with. But my gut says otherwise. I mean, the story he told wasn't real. It never happened. But the spirit of what he was saying, how he was saying it, in some weird way it felt true. Like he actually meant it. There hasn't been much encouragement these last few years. Even when I'd get the occasional compliment, Connor, you're so artistic, funny, passionate. I never believed it. Against all the negative feedback, a few nice words didn't register. Also, it depends on who was giving the compliments. They meant less from my mother, who overdid it, more from my father, who underdid it, and the most from... That's the fucked up part about this speech. It would have really meant something coming from a true friend. He should have been the one standing up there saying those words. Because for him, I actually did show up. For him, I risked it all. Around me, there's a growing sound. And as usual, I only ended up hurting myself. First, sparse. What difference did any of it make? Then steady. Did I even matter at all? Hitting me, slowly. What I'm hearing, like an answer. Applause. 6. I've been watching him. I can't help it. What started as curiosity is something else now. In some crazy way, it almost feels like Evan and I really were friends. I've heard it said so much, I'm starting to actually believe it. Who knows? Maybe in some alternate universe we could have been. Not that I have much experience in this area. I basically spent my whole life alone. Until I met Miguel. That was his name. Sometimes M. Never Mike. I keep wanting to see him, but I stop myself. What's the point of putting myself through that again? We met sophomore year at Hanover, an all-boys school. I thought I'd hate that, but it actually made my life simpler. I'd rate my experience with girls somewhere between very unsatisfactory and not applicable. It was the fresh start I needed. In public school, I could never escape the vision everyone had of me. At Hanover, I was new again, untainted. No one made me believe that more than Miguel. My first week, we got paired together in biology. I muttered a joke that made him laugh. How do you tell the sex of a chromosome? Pull down its genes. It felt normal, our interaction. What I always imagined normal would be. He knew a little about everything. Spoke about subjects I'd never considered. Cryptocurrency and alkaline foods. Quoted people I'd never heard of. Nietzsche and David Sedaris. Listened to artists I'd missed. Perfume genius and the war on drugs. Asked questions I didn't know to ask. Did the government demolish Building 7 on 9/11? Will humans survive ocean acidification? Where are all the baby pigeons? He could sort out the exact right dosage of edibles to get you floating, as opposed to sinking. He told me I was innocent, which was the opposite of how I viewed myself, but something I felt was true in my heart. He saw me before I saw me. He was the first person I'd known who was openly and proudly gay. I was something in between, fluid, the way I thought about both girls and guys. Back then, I had only begun to put those thoughts into action. We hung out a little at school, but after school, we were a duo. We'd go downtown, stay warm in the bookstore, watch the skateboarders at Irwin Center. I'd be waiting outside the bakery when he got off work. I'd go with him to bring the unsold baguettes to his cousin. We'd end up on a bench, tossing bread to birds, regretting how much waste there was in the world. Sometimes these conversations happened on a bus, other nights on his living room couch. His mom would come home and whip us up a feast. I'd leave at bedtime, my belly and head full. Heart too. And then one day in second semester, he was in a panic. They found weed on him. For the first time, his swagger was missing. I tried to downplay it. It's just a little weed, and so what if they do kick you out? You'd be lucky to get out of this place. You think it was easy for me to get in here? Maybe for you. I started thinking the worst. What if he did get kicked out? Where would that leave me? What would I do without him? And then another split-second decision. I went to the dean, told him it was mine. I don't know what I thought would happen. I wasn't thinking it through, just following some gut thing. We all signed the same school contract, 0 tolerance. Penalty? Expulsion. My parents tried to fight it, but it was no use. Miguel's record stayed clean, and I got sent to rehab. My father had threatened to send me the year before. My mother persuaded him to send me to a summer wilderness program instead, and then to Hanover. What's crazy? I was basically just smoking weed at the time. But it didn't matter. My track record didn't support my story. I had run out of chances. The irony? It was rehab that introduced me to a new set of bad habits. Wilderness camp was a literal walk in the park compared with rehab. The kids I was with were hard addicts. Some of them didn't even resemble kids. Weathered skin, teeth, eyes. Almost not human, more like zombies, and that's how the staff treated them. Treated us. But I didn't belong there. I acted like I did. Pretended I was a bigger user than I ever really was, just to blend in. Survival. But inside, I was shaking. I missed home. For once, I had something at home to miss. After rehab, we saw each other less. Different schools. He had a full schedule with work and Amnesty International. Also, his mom didn't want him hanging out with me. I never met his dad and doubt that he ever knew I existed. But we still texted a lot. I'd complain to him about public school, how I was being treated. People hear you went to rehab, and they act like you're poison. You start to believe it, too. Fuck 'em, Miguel would say. Simple and resolute. Fuck 'em. It helped. Whenever I stopped to think about my life, the turn it took, the anger would consume me. I wonder now, what would have happened if I stayed at Hanover? Maybe life could have gone a different way. And then one day, this past spring, Miguel came over. He made a big deal of it, too. I feel like maybe I'm the first Mexican in your house who wasn't getting paid to be here. I said no. What I didn't tell him, he was the first anyone in my house. The first person I'd ever invited over. I'd hooked up with people by then, but it's not like I was bringing anyone home to meet the parents. The house was empty. We hung in my bedroom. He made fun of one of my books. The Little Prince? Really? That actually explains a lot. He said I was a boy in man's clothing. He introduced me to a ton of books and authors. I never returned his copy of The Mysteries of Pittsburgh. There was a new energy between us. We were older now, more experienced. Thoughts had become actions. We got high and lay on the floor. Your hair is getting long, he said. I wanted to find scissors immediately, but then he said, I like it. He played me this one song. When it was over, I asked him to play it again. One line stood out. Don't hold back. I want to break free. I listened to that song every day for months, until it became too painful to hear. Lying there, I noticed a birthmark on his neck. I had never noticed it before. I reached out and touched my finger to it. We locked eyes. That birthmark, a magic button. Once pushed, the whole world suddenly lit up. 7. This time we were at his house. Miguel would still have me over, but only when his mom was at work. I always liked his mom. Sharp tongue but soft heart. Amazing cook. Super welcoming. Until I got expelled. The sad twist that only Em and I could appreciate. My trying to help her son was what led her to hate me. Ever since that day at my house, our friendship had bloomed into something else. Junior year was hell, but Miguel was my silver lining. The one worthwhile part of my life. I always looked forward to seeing him, but lately that feeling was more like a compulsion. This gravitational force pulling me toward him. I didn't want to be near him. I had to. That day at his house, he lay next to me. I studied his body, trying to memorize it before it became hidden again. The way his skin seemed to absorb the energy of the lamplight, his chest caving in, forming a shallow pool. I wondered who else in his life was granted this privilege. Who else got to push that birthmark button? My social life resembled a line connecting only 2 points, but Miguel's was a circle. He had other friends at Hanover, a big family with lots of cousins, and there was an ex he still spoke to. Where did I fit in? Near his center, or toward an outer ring? "What is that?" he asked, breaking the silence. I followed his gaze, realizing too late where he'd been looking. I'd forgotten that I'd removed my bracelets. Something I normally wouldn't do. Something his gravitational force persuaded me to do. I pulled my wrist away. "Nothing," I said. He stared into my eyes. It felt like a challenge. I got out of bed, rolled my bracelets on. A few scars from a few idle nights. Passing time, really. A lighter, matches, candle wax. Fine, not nothing, but not totally something either. He sat up. "You always do that," he said. "Do what?" I said, putting on my shirt. "Any time I get too close." His feet hit the floor. I tried to laugh. "What are you talking about?" "We're always here at my house. You had me over one time. It's like you only give me these tiny glimpses." I challenged him with a dead stare. "Why do you even care? It's not like we're..." I shrugged. "I don't even know what we are supposed to be." He shook his head and sighed, stood up. "How can we get there if you don't let me?" Spoken like a statement, an ultimatum. I had no choice, really. Miguel didn't know what the past year had been like. He'd heard, sure, but he wasn't actually there. He knew only the legend, not the reality. Day after day after day. Scratching and scraping, the damage done to me and by me. Every good thing turned bad. Lying in bed at night and imagining myself just... "You don't understand," I said. He looked at me for a moment, and then he came up to my face, nose to nose, eye to eye. Not as close as we were a moment ago, and yet somehow more intimate than that. "So," he said, "tell me." I stood before him and I shook. I shook from his stare. "Be fucking real with me." How? How could I do it? When underneath whatever he thought he saw in me was something so beyond repair. I stepped back, clenched my jaw, locked myself up. Got dressed as fast as I could. He tried to stop me, called me back, but my split decision was already made. Run for your life. Still running, I guess. There's this photo of me going around now. Short hair, big goofy smile on my face. I saw it everywhere at that assembly a few weeks back. My mother must have found it on my phone. I guess she had no way of knowing that I edited the photo. A selfie, taken by Miguel. In the original, he is by my side, his smile as wide as mine. I was certain of one thing, how I felt when I was around him and when I wasn't. The first was exhilarating, the other unbearable. Being with him was like being hooked on a drug. When we stopped seeing each other, I went into withdrawal. It was a long, dark summer. 8. I follow him out. He shuffles down the driveway and into the street, stands there right in the middle, circling, pacing, talking to himself, rambling. I can't hear what he's saying, not until I get closer. What have you done? What the fuck have you done? I know it so well. The moment of reckoning after the worst mistake. The crossfire of regret. Helplessness, hopelessness, hatred, on and on and on. A tsunami of self-torment. He pulls at his hair, grabbing whole chunks, striking blows to his own skull. No, 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 no! A rabid animal. What the fuck is wrong with me? I've asked all the same questions. Still asking them now. I turn back to the house. He let it all out. What he'd been carrying, everything. But he's still not free. Still has himself to deal with. Always the hardest one to face. He lowers onto the pavement, sits down in the street, right in the middle. Eerie, the way it looks, familiar, staged like a sacrifice. I turn around, checking for cars. It's dark here, no streetlights. We're hidden in the shadows. I feel compelled to try. Get up, I say. He shakes his head, keeps shaking it. He can try to wish the pain away. Not going to make it stop. Trust me, I tried. A distant headlight. Evan sees it too, but doesn't move. I try again. Hey, get up. If the pain is in you, it's in you. It follows you everywhere. Can't outrun it, can't erase it, can't push it away. It only comes back. The way I've been thinking after all that's happened, maybe there's only one way to survive it. You have to let it in. Let it hurt you. And don't wait. It'll reach you eventually. Might as well be now. I bend down, get right in his face. I try to reach him, the way someone once tried to reach me. It's the last instinct we have, and the most difficult, nearly impossible. But still, it's our only choice. Own it, I say. I wasn't able to. You hear me, Evan? That's what you do. You get up and you own it. 9. The house is quiet. Same as it was on that day. Except my family wasn't upstairs like they are now. That day, my last day, I was here, all alone. Miguel and I hadn't spoken since the day I left his house. He had sent me a few messages right after. I never responded, and he stopped sending them. It was the longest summer of my life. I couldn't eat, couldn't read, couldn't sit still, couldn't even sleep without plenty of help. At night, I'd go into the park behind my house, get high, stare up at the stars, searching for answers, for why I was the way I was, so broken and so alone again. I couldn't shake Miguel or what we'd had. All these emotions, hurt and hate and more hurt. I would draw him in my sketch pad, that birthmark on his neck, then trash the page. I had replayed our last day together so many times. He wanted to see me, but there were parts too dark to show. Parts he wouldn't like, parts that would send him running. If anything, I was only avoiding the inevitable. He would have left me if I didn't leave first. Then, after so many days spent alone, suddenly I'm at school. Something about being back in that space. On a whim, I decided to reach out to him. I sent a text. First day's blow. Hope you're steering clear of Mr. Nielsen's morning breath. I waited for an answer. Mrs. Coughlin caught me using my phone, gave me shit. But next time I had a chance to check, I had a message from him. A thumbs up emoji. Huh? I tried to interpret. It left me with a strange feeling, like he almost couldn't be bothered. Then, that day happened like it did. The thing with Evan at lunch, then later with his letter. I felt swallowed by the swarm, surrounded by all these people and somehow lonelier than ever. None of them saw me or knew me. The only one who ever did, I'd pushed away. I left school feeling myself falling. Fast. But then I saw it on my phone. That thumbs up. Suddenly it looked different to me. Took on a new light, like a beacon of hope. a bridge to him, to what I'd given up. Maybe it wasn't such a shitty reply after all. It's not like I gave him much to respond to. I didn't exactly put myself out there. I never once did. Never once showed him the rawest me. Not when there was so much risk involved. And now, out of the blue, he receives a message from me. The first in months. Can't blame him for being lukewarm. I was the one who'd created the silence in the first place, and now I could just as quickly end it. If only... Standing on a street corner, I sent Miguel another message. This one was agonizing to write, even more agonizing to feel. But the words alone were the simplest I knew. I miss you. I laid myself bare. No room for misinterpretation. What I felt. The rawest me. I waited. Soon, on my screen, 3 wiggling dots in a white thought bubble. A response forming, my nerves at attention, anticipation, my broken soul being patched up, and then, just as suddenly, the dots left. I waited for his message. I waited. But it never came. All the fear I'd lived with. Fuck him, he'd always say. Maybe I misunderstood him all those times before. Maybe he wasn't taking my side against the world. Maybe that was just his motto with everyone. Everyone but himself. Fuck him. Yeah, okay. Fuck him. I cried. So much. I had no one. Nothing. I was nothing. I vowed to make it stop. The hurt. The rest is a blur. I called a guy from rehab. He gave me what I needed. I wiped Miguel from my past. Erased the photos in my phone, the ones I hadn't already cut him out of. Deleted his text messages, removed his name from my contacts. I entered the house. I went to my room. I locked the door. I couldn't own it. I tried to numb myself, to deflect the pain, not realizing that it always returns. It always returns. Let it in. Now, in this same house, I hear laughter. I can make it out clearly, coming from above. I follow the sound, up our winding staircase, down the hall, toward a light, an open door, my bedroom. My mother sits on my bed, a fading smile. Spread open on her lap is my sketchpad. My father arrives. He steps inside the room, looks over her shoulder. He's funny, she says. He always had a sharp sense of humor. He used to love jokes. When he was a little boy, do you remember? Of course, he says. Why did the chicken cross the road? He had 1,000,000 different answers to that one. One day he said to me, Mom, why did the duck cross the road? Because he wanted to prove he wasn't chicken. My mother stares at the sketchpad. I used to sneak in here, search everywhere for a clue, something. I flipped through this book, I can't tell you how many times, but I never actually looked at what was in here. I mean, really looked. I never saw it. You did what you could. It wasn't enough. No one blames you. But I do. But I don't. It's no one's fault. And it's everyone's. That day, in his bedroom, he stood in front of me. Maybe if I leave them clinging to each other. It's time to go. I take one last walk through the house. Everywhere, memories. In the kitchen, Cynthia and her rules. No pots or pans allowed in the dishwasher. Same for serving bowls, ladles, spatulas. It's all dishwasher safe, I'd tell her. She only wanted certain things inside. Glasses, plates, utensils. Everything else was piled on the counter. She'd stand at the sink, hands in thick gloves scrubbing away, one by one, scrubbing. In the living room, 2 dots in the ceiling. We said they were nipples, Zoe and I. The joke was someone fell upstairs and imprinted their chest. Made no sense. In the bathroom, the door frame is 2 shades of white. The left side had to be replaced. I took a hammer to it. I can't remember why. After that, my father started locking up his tools. In the garage, a second fridge where Larry keeps his craft beers and frozen sweets, labeled bins on shelves. The whole place spotless, except for that paint splash on the floor, shaped like a creature. Larry was livid when it appeared. He tried every cleaning product. The paint creature matched a color Zoe had in her art supplies. She swore it wasn't her. It wasn't me either, although everyone assumed it was. Still to this day, one of those family mysteries. In Larry's office, paperwork on the desk, contracts, an illustration with my name on it, the Connor Murphy Memorial Orchard, my father's notes in the margins. I study his handwriting. He doesn't close his G or D. I do the same. In the backyard, our pool is sealed for the winter. Drain his energy, one of the docs said. And so they signed me up for swim team. Zoe would time my laps. I asked her to yell at me with a German accent. She did it too. All that training, and I quit before the first meet. I step into the grass. There's this one memory from our old house. We had a yard much smaller than this. A neighborhood kid was over. I picked up a rock, big one, like a potato. I pretended to throw it. My hand was wet. The rock slipped out. I followed it in the air, dreading its arc. Crack. Right to the face. He writhed around. I didn't help him. I was frozen. So scared. He ran home hacking, coughing. I sank into the grass. I couldn't move. Later, his mother tore into mine, making her believe, "There's something wrong with your son." I turned my attention to the sky. A clear night. Stars visible. Where are they exactly, those stars? They're gone, but still here. Extinguished, but burning bright. A contradiction. How can that be? Maybe I'm like those stars now. I have a place in the universe, just not here anymore. How does it end up this way? I try to follow how it happens, all of it. Still, I can't begin to understand. I make my exit.